Did you miss the NPR News headline? Hear what you miss on New and Better 85.5 RNB for Los Angeles.
Live from NPR News, I'm Janine Herbst. Americans are honoring civil rights icon Congressman John Lewis, who has died at the age of 80 after being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. NPR's Amy Held reports the flag at the White House is flying at half-staff for the longtime Democratic representative from Georgia.
Calling John Lewis his hero, former President Barack Obama said Lewis risked his life for his country, inspiring generations. It was 1965 when state troopers beat a 25-year-old Lewis, fracturing his skull as he marched peacefully from Selma to Montgomery for voting rights. Lewis took his fight to Washington, serving as a Georgia congressman for more than 3 decades. Telling NPR in 2013, the vote remains our most powerful nonviolent instrument.
I do feel a major responsibility to do my part in helping to protect the right of all of our citizens to participate in the democratic process.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said Lewis endured what would have broken others and made us a better nation. Amy Held, NPR News.
In Russia's Far East, unprecedented protests against the authorities in Moscow have entered into a second week. As NPR's Lucian Kim reports, protesters are demanding the release of a popular governor who faces charges of organizing contract killings 15 years ago.
Sergei Forgal is the governor of Khabarovsk region, a Russian province on the Pacific coast 7 time zones east of Moscow. Forgal, who beat the Kremlin-backed candidate in an election 2 years ago, is now in pre-trial detention in Moscow, infuriating locals. Return Forgal to us, they shouted at the 8th consecutive rally in the regional capital Khabarovsk, which attracted thousands. Protesters' anger is directed against Russia's super-centralized system of government, in which all major decisions are taken in the Kremlin. In the Pacific port city of Vladivostok, hundreds of people turned out in solidarity with the protest in Khabarovsk. Lucian Kim, NPR News, Moscow.
The number of coronavirus infections continues to rise in many states around the country. There are now more than 3.6 million cases in the U.S. and nearly 140,000 deaths, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. In Florida, the state's Department of Health says more than 10,000 new cases have been reported, and the death toll has surpassed 5,000. This as Governor Ron DeSantis plans to open all schools for in-person learning next month. DeSantis says the risk to students is low.
I think fear is our enemy here, and I think that we approach this with a steady resolve. I think we're going to handle it much, much better.
He also says there are too many challenges to remote learning. Some hospital workers say they're waiting more than 2 weeks for test results, but DeSantis says a new self-swab introduced yesterday at testing sites will cut the wait time down. This is NPR. The British government says it will pause its announcements of the daily coronavirus death toll over concerns of the accuracy of the count, which officially stands at 40,000. As Elliot Hannon reports, British health officials say that number may exaggerate the virus's true death toll.
At issue is how the government attributes a death to being caused by the virus. The way the count currently works, when someone in England dies after testing positive for the coronavirus, it's tallied as a virus-related fatality no matter how long after the test the death occurred. Elsewhere in the UK, after a positive test, there's a 28-day cutoff for a death to be considered virus-related. Public health officials say that in England, as many as 10% of the deaths attributed to the virus have occurred more than 28 days after a positive test. For NPR News, I'm Elliot Hannon in London.
In southern China, at least 14 people are dead after heavy rain, flooding, and landslides hit the area. Soldiers and workers use sandbags and rocks today, trying to keep the Yangtze River inside its banks. The country's official news agency, Xinhua, says 3 floodgates at the Three Gorges hydropower dam, which is used to mitigate catastrophic flooding, were opened as the water level rose more than 50 feet above flood stage. The country's Ministry of Emergency Management says nearly 2 million people have been evacuated because of the flooding. China is used to seasonal flooding, but officials say this rainfall has been unusually high this year. I'm Janine Herbst, and you're listening to NPR News.